Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Geek Podcast, where we celebrate geek, nerd, and pop culture. Each week, we deliver the best analysis for fans, by fans, on anything related to movies, TV, video games, comics, anime, and manga. We talk geek. And now, here's the Get Geek Podcast.
Really? The first time he really?
What?
He never barks until right now?
Yeah. He's never barked during the podcast before, during any of my podcasts before. But I guess there we go. He's barking at something rather excitedly. I almost don't want to cut this. I think I'm going to keep it in so we can talk about how my dog is finally making noise. Not finally. He barks. He does bark. I've heard him bark before. It's just relatively rare. Anyways, what's going on, y'all? This is the Get Geek Podcast. Y'all know me. My name is Jose, and I have a special guest with me this week. Unfortunately, the crew could not join me for the Get Geek Podcast this week. We're missing Walt, we're missing AJ, we're missing Wolfie, we're missing Eli. But we got a friend of mine from the Positively Cynical Podcast, which is another little podcast I do that y'all kids can't listen to. It's rated R. This is rated a little bit more PG-13. Please introduce yourself. Say hello to the Get Geek Podcast fans, my friend.
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm a special guest, but I guess that's nice.
You are.
What's up, Jose?
You're special.
Thank you. I'll take that in the positive sense of the word in this instance.
Say hello. Tell the people what your name is. Tell them what's up.
Well, yeah. I guess you can say I'm Question. I was here and I work on this other podcast, the Positively Cynical one. I guess you can call that the more.
That's the name of the podcast. That's the name of the podcast is Positively Cynical, and I guess is the Positively Cynical one that we do. So it's the Positively Cynical Podcast. But anyway,
yes, both in name and in attitude.
In name and in attitude. For those of you that know me best, wow, I think he's still going back there on the backyard or something like that. He's really my dog Ophi is really getting into it today. Maybe he's about as upset as we are over what we're going to talk about.
Oh God!
Maybe he saw it. Maybe he saw it. I don't know. But before we get into all of that, I want to welcome Question. Thank you for jumping in and helping us to do the podcast, the Get Geek Podcast, this week. Well, the rest of the crew is unavailable. I'm sure they'll enjoy some of our musings this week as well. As usual, this is a remote recording. Y'all have heard that millions and millions of times before. You don't need to hear it again. If you have any issues with it, please slide into our DMs and let us know. And the best way to support one of your favorite podcast crews, which is something I need to start saying because I have the same spiel on both of my podcasts. If you want to support one of your favorite podcast crews, please like, rate, share, and subscribe on all of your social media platforms where we are available. We are available on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the norms at Get Geek Podcast on Twitter, at Get Geek News. Of course, you can check out Get Geek Podcast, hashtag Get Geek Podcast, hashtag Get Geek News to find all of our social media, all of our web pages, and all that other good stuff. And please give us some high ratings on Apple Podcasts, which, because Apple rules the world, is the best place to generate some engagement for your favorite podcast crews. So anyways, Question, thanks for joining me once again. And we're going to talk about what my dog Ophi is very, very upset about in a little bit. We're going to talk about the film Eternals, which you and I got to see yesterday. It is November 7th while we're recording this. November 5th is when the Eternals came out, and we saw it on Saturday morning, November 6th. So we're going to have a conversation about that. But first, we're going to do something that we like to have a little bit of fun with around here on our Get Geek Podcast episodes. It's just called the Geek Out. Very, very simply, I'll demonstrate how we do it. We just talk about something that we've enjoyed recently in terms of movies, music, anime, video games, or something that we're looking forward to. since I've talked about Battlefield 2042 ad nauseum on this podcast in the last couple of months, that is not what I'm geeking out about this week. But I'll tell y'all what I'm geeking out about this week, and then I'll turn it over to a couple of friends of mine to continue the story. I've finished the first season of a show that I've mentioned on some previous Get Geek episodes, and something that I mentioned to you as well, question that I think that you should certainly check out, and that's For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus, which is a very, very interesting alternate history show for those of you that I have not been able to describe it for you. For those of you who have not heard about this show before, it's an alternate history show on Apple TV Plus where the Russians make it to the moon first. A cosmonaut is the first person to land on the moon, and America is not the first country to land on the moon in this show.
So they just finished the job. Sputnik just went all the way to the moon, huh?
Yep, they go all the way. America doesn't have the gumption to do it. They don't do it. They don't go all the way to the moon. And Russia wins the space race, and it leads to a whole lot of other really strange alternate history firsts, such as the next few people to fly in space and the next few people to attempt to go to the moon are women, which is another bit of alternate history that changes the whole dynamic of the show entirely. At first, I thought it was going to be... No, go ahead. What's your?
I was going to say there was a question I was about to ask, but I don't know if that would be a spoiler.
We could do mild spoilers. We could do semi-mild spoilers if you would like.
No, I was just curious as to, because you said women would be the next ones to attempt going into space. Are they American women, or are they Russians, or are they another country that's like a dark horse for the moon and the space race?
Well, in order to engage me and intrigue me in the show, somebody kind of spoiled this for me, so I'll put it out there. Yeah, a Russian woman actually lands on the moon as well. In fact, in order to add insult to injury, you could say, not only does Russia land the first man on the moon, but also before America even lands somebody on the moon, lands a woman on the moon. So
they double down. Okay,
they smack the heck out of America in this competition, in this show, at least in the early going. But it's features some great actors, including for the geek crowds. It's got some Joel Kinnaman, who was Colonel Flagg in the recent Suicide Squad movies. He's one of the leads in the show. And I mean, it was a really, really, really good first season. I mean, at first I was a little worried that it was going to be a little cliche, because you had your female characters who seemed like they might be archetypes at first, and like some of your like male characters who are like obviously prejudiced against the whole idea of having female astronauts. You know, you have your government stooges, you have all the archetypes kind of fitting in there. But like another Ted Lasso, or like another Apple TV Plus show that I like, Ted Lasso, I should say, that seems like it's going to be super formulaic. Somehow this show also manages to stay away from being super formulaic and has some really, really great characters and some really, really great actresses, or actors, but female actors in those parts, rather than being kind of weird and pandery and all that. It ends up being a really, really great and really, really interesting show. The special effects are really, really cool. It's got to be pretty expensive. And for the people, the geek cred people out there, it is a Ronald D. Moore production. And those of you who are in the know, that's the person who co-created and produced the most recent super popular iconic Battlestar Galactica reboot or TV show featuring Edward James Olmos and others. So it's got some serious sci-fi cred behind it. And I mean, yeah, it's a really, 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 really awesome show. That's as spoilery as I'm going to get with it, because I've been suggesting it for a while, but I hear season 2 is even better. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, you know, reviews notwithstanding, I don't want to let the reviews influence how excited I get about it, but season 2 is supposed to be better. So I'm excited to see where they go with it in season 2. I literally just finished season 1 yesterday, as of the day that we record this. So yeah,
interesting.
For All Mankind, it's a pretty awesome show. Y'all should definitely check it out. As far as any other thing that I'm interested in or geeking out about I'm actually something that I'm looking forward to playing, and I've seen some great reviews on it. I hear that Forza Horizon 5 is really good.
Really nice.
Yes. Yeah. So you have Xbox, you have Game Pass.
Yes. I see it. I was actually debating whether or not I should play it, but if you're about to give it a ringing endorsement, then I'll check it out.
Well, I'd be curious actually to see what Walt thinks of it, because he purchased the game. So he got it, I think, on the 5th. I think whoever purchased the game gets the early release and gets it on November 5th. The rest of us get it on Tuesday, November 9th, which is when I'm going to try it.
Through Game Pass or
through Game Pass, you can get it.
Okay,
yeah.
good to know.
Yeah, yeah. You just don't get the pre-order bonus of 4 days. So I'm curious to see what Walt thinks. I really wish he would have been able to be on this podcast to kind of give us his opinion, but it's been getting some great reviews. I think IGN gave it a 10 out of 10, which is a rarity for reviews in any video game. And
yeah,
I mean, just the Forza Horizon concept, if you're not familiar with what Forza Horizon is, it's a racing game. Forza is generally a more realistic racing game. Forza Horizon is a little more arcade style, and it's an open world racing game. So you can race down like all kinds of random streets, all kinds of random places. Instead of just like racing on preset tracks, you can like, race through a forest or something like that. I mean, I don't know what the environments are going to look like, but I'm very, very super, super excited to try that actually in a few days. I wasn't as excited until I saw some stuff recently, until the release date got closer and closer and closer and closer. So besides all of the other million things that are coming out for gamers, the Call of Duty Vanguards, the Halo Infinites, the Battlefield 2042s, which comes out as well next week, I'm super excited to try Forza Horizon 5 for my Xbox Series X, because, again, it looks real, real, real pretty. I already preloaded the game on Xbox, so
someone's ready.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to try it. I'm really excited to give that a try in a few days. And, well, like I said, Walt, I wonder if you have an opinion on this one. If you do, I'd be curious to hear it. So I'll be asking you about that pretty soon. Yeah, that's basically what I've been geeking out about over the last couple of weeks here. The shows I've been watching, the games I'm looking forward to. What about you, good sir? What have you been watching recently?
I got a question for you before I go.
Yeah.
Now, this new game is essentially Grand Theft Auto.
No,
the racing game.
It's not Grand Theft Auto. You can't like get out of the car and like hijack people.
Oh, well,
but
I'm not saying that, but or you
anywhere.
can steal cars, right? But you can probably drive around off of the track and still get to the finish line wherever it is, I assume.
I mean, I don't know how the race structure works. I don't think you can really drive off the designated track, but you can drive wherever the heck you want. And if you're online and you're driving, say, with a friend, y'all could just race off road if you want. You don't have to do like a designated race. If you just agree to like drive like insane people like through a forest and not hit the trees on the way through, then yeah, I'm sure you can do that. It's Grand Theft Auto in that sense. It's like definitely that sandbox, that open racing game. Oh, I should mention actually. I should mention this. I don't want to like actually cut you off and now say that I'm going to continue my geek out, but I know this is a game that you've been playing and that you saw me play recently. I did play City Skylines. Finally.
You took the words out of my mouth, but go ahead, because I went pretty nuts on that the other day. But go ahead.
All right, so we'll just have this be like kind of a dual geek out on that game. I mean, I'll be frank, I haven't played it super deeply yet. You saw me playing the other day for a little bit. You were hanging out and you saw me kind of get a decently sized small city going in that game and solve some of the issues that had been plaguing you and my fiance in past playthroughs. I was kind of inspired to play this again because apparently she was inspired to play this again, which inspired you to play it again, which inspired me to be like, well, I think I could do this. I've played SimCity before. I can play City Skylines. So it's a cool game. I mean, if you've played SimCity before, like you basically know what City Skylines is, which is not a bad thing. But at the same time, the way that it does some things a little bit differently, I don't really like how you do the zoning in this game. We talked about that the other day.
Mm-hmm.
In SimCity, you can drag any sized zone that you really want in order to build your commercial zones, in order to build your commercial businesses, in order to build your residential zones, to build housing for people, and in order to build your industrial zones, to build businesses where people can work. And in this game, they're kind of like pre-planned plots.
Well, not necessarily. I think that depending on, I think you can
It's where
edit
you
it
put your
so you
roads.
can actually do it like per box or per square, like individual square. You can be super nuanced, if I'm not mistaken, with these Skylines. I'm just trying to kind of get back into the game myself. I said, after I saw you guys play it the other day, I went a little crazy myself. It was one of those, okay, let me just kind of see what I'm working with here. As far as my city, I had a city that I pretty much put on pause. It seems about 5 months ago I found out. So I wanted to look at it with fresh eyes just to see if there's anything I could kind of look at it, and plus to refamiliarize myself with the game. And it turns out, at least for the game I seeded, I was doing pretty well
You didn't
because
have
I
any
had
garbage
about
problems? Any sanitation issues?
well, apparently I did have some sanitation issues, but I seem to have had apparently a decent amount in the budget. So I tried to counter that more or less minute one. I already had 2 landfills and
Okay.
whatever else. But I tried to add a recycling center and some other stuff. So I was trying to get ahead of the waste problem, but you can never get ahead of the waste problem when
I
you play this
don't
game, trust me.
agree. I haven't had that problem. I told you. I think I know what
Yes,
it is.
wait, just wait.
Well, my fiance Claire's not having that problem, and she's got a pretty decent sized city again and a pretty big playthrough. I'm telling you, with the way that y'all were describing how you play the game and how you set up your roads, I knew that transporting that trash and traffic was the issue. That's the issue. If you set up your roads well, you don't have the sanitation problems. Y'all thought it was a bug, but after like setting up
No,
her
no, no.
roads really, really well, there's no sanitation issue.
Well, yeah, I did, like I told you the other day, the way that I was playing the game, at least from the beginning, because again, I have it through Game Pass, and you just kind of dabble here and there. If I wanted to, I could really go really deep into it. As far as creating a city, I was just doing it more or less to get a feel for the game and to mess around with the game and see how it was. And then later on, kind of do, this is a test city more or less. And then I was going to do the real city later on. But when you start kind of building out the test city, you kind of roll with it. And, it was just, at the beginning, I realized you're right, because as far as the roads, I just did everything with small roads because, well, you have but so much as far as the budget. But I am now realizing, okay, I knew at some point I had to do it as far as adding the bigger roads, adding connection points and stuff like that. And now I'm starting to kind of see there's a little bit more free flowing movement. Traffic is an issue, which also compounds other things. But because I'm able to widen the roads out a little bit more, I have a lot of space left in my city, so I can work with what I got. But between the money and the space, I'm making it work. So waste isn't as much of a problem. Plus, since I knew what happened before, I'm trying to get ahead of it. So I'm trying to I built a water treatment plant. I built 2 recycling centers. I'm trying to make my city pretty green. And I think you get some added benefits if you go green too. They do reward you in the game. So I'm trying to play it, and I'm telling you, what was literally like, oh, I'll play this for a couple of minutes. Let me just see what I'm working with. Turned into, I swear to God, 6 hours. It happens. I was not planning on that, but
it's just like Civilization.
Oh man, that's another game. Now that you mention it, I do want to get into. I think
you have
maybe
6,
later on
right?
today.
You have,
yeah. I think later on today I might actually dabble in that again. Since I got so motivated with these Skylines, I kind of want to see what I can do as far as countries and empires now. I take this stuff on a bigger scale.
Take
again.
It global.
Yeah, see if we can build some empires instead of a city.
Like I said the other day, and as it is in real life, infrastructure is the thing, isn't it? That's what it is in City Skylines. You have to build good roads, and if you build good roads, then your city moves smoothly and functions well. and you don't have sanitation issues and cemetery issues with not enough crematoriums for your dead people and all those
I
other
did
weird
build some.
issues.
I learned my lesson.
It's all
I
supply
built
line
two,
issues.
yes, I built two more cemeteries, and I put two more crematoriums. So all those little skull and crossbones
Yeah.
and everything.
Now
I'm
you
trying to get
know.
ahead of all this. I'm
Now
trying to
you
get,
know.
and when you get to 20,000, that's you get a new milestone. So a couple of other things open up, and you can get like a solar powered processing plant for waste processing plant, which of course maximizes production, but also doesn't work in the dark. So there's always a catch in this game. But I'm trying to kind of sharpen my planning mental muscles here. It's really cool. And now that I guess I'm committed to this city, I got 20,000 plus people. I guess we're a little town, if not a city now. I guess I'm going to stay with this version and see where it goes. But yeah, I have you guys to thank for scratching that itch again, because it was sitting on my Xbox staring at me. And I'm like, one of these days I'm going to get back to this game.
Don't you want to play me again? Don't you remember?
Oh,
all
I
the
was
good
going
times?
to, and here we are. So we're back, see Skyline, we're back.
All right. What else have you been watching or playing or consuming recently?
Well, we had a conversation about this the other day. I don't know if we consider this to be a guilty pleasure. I guess it kind of is for me.
There are no
'cause
guilty
this was a
pleasures
show-
on this podcast. Whatever you want to watch, you can watch. That's it.
Well, this was a show I never thought I'd get into, but I was looking for another series to watch. And a few days ago, I was going through Netflix. And every time you go on Netflix, you always see, certain shows, especially those Netflix shows that kind of pop up first, like front and center. And one show that I always see that I've more or less ignored, because I never thought I'd watch that show, was of all The Crown. I never thought I'd get into this show, but I was going through Netflix, a couple of days ago, and they said, all right, you know what? Let's see what all the fuss is about. It's critically acclaimed. It's won a bunch of awards.
Mhm.
Apparently, it's very well acted. And I have to say, I have a soft spot for British history. I have a soft spot for history in general, but for British history, I have a little bit of a soft spot. So I just wanted to see how they did it more from a historically accurate historical context
So
perspective.
what's it about?
Well, apparently, 'cause I'm still actually kind of trying to figure that out. I did say I give myself the first 3 episodes to watch, and if they were halfway decent, then I continue.
Mhm.
So far, so good, Crown. You're doing it. It's been pretty interesting. I didn't know how far back they would go with this Crown stuff, but they only go back as far. It's essentially post World War II. So when I saw it was basically from King George VI on, I was like, all right, I can do this. It's a short amount of time. You're not going to go into the super history of like every single king and queen that's ruled the United Kingdom.
It's like Prince John and Robin Hood and all that.
Yeah, none of that. No Henry VIII or VII or none of those. It's just basically post World War II Britain and how the royal family basically did their thing from then to, I assume it's present day, because I think it's 4 seasons and they're in. I think they just wrapped up season 4. It's been wrapped up, and I think this is the season they go into like the Princess Diana, Prince Charles, kind of sort of more recent modern day stuff. So, granted, it's kind of salacious. I will say this: it's fascinating when you're watching this show because it's crazy just how I don't, for lack of a better word, how entertaining life itself can be. I mean, the things
when
that
you're rich and famous. We said that
Well,
the other
that's
day
true.
too, right? Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
like when-
not that we don't have good lives and all that because we're not rich and famous. Yeah,
But you can't make half
still.
this stuff up, though. I mean, like I don't even know. Like, again, it's this old shoe. It's the crazy part. All the things that the royal family in Britain has gone through from like 1945 on. I don't even think the best author could have come up with half the stuff that family's been through. I mean, there's a lot of drama, and I mean, granted it's it's a family. They have their ups and downs. They're pretty entertaining, I will say. And it's starting to it's starting to grab me as far as, okay, I already know where this goes because, I mean, it's history. It's all true.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of want to see how they do it.
Okay.
And it's quite amusing because I've been, right before we did this, my father called. And I've actually been meaning to talk to him about this because, he's from Jamaica. They lived all of this history from a Commonwealth standpoint. So he's familiar with all this, monarchs and prime ministers and all this stuff. And I'm basically watching the show and I'm using him as a frame of reference to say, okay, if this is how they portray it on this show, like you lived it, even if it's in a different country, but you were around during the time. Is this true? Like, how is it? Like, was it as crazy as they're making it out to be? And the cherry on top, I think what really got me kind of hooked, I think I'd say 3 episodes in. Guess who plays Winston Churchill?
Who?
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow.
That's what got me. I was like, John Lithgow goes from playing FDR and Dick Solomon from Third Rock from the Sun to Winston Churchill. I don't know how tall Winston Churchill is, but I always assumed he was kind of like a short fella. But I mean, John Lithgow is ginormous, so he kind of towers over everyone. And it's like, oh, I'm old, frail Winston Churchill, but he's still towering over everyone. So it's very interesting. It's kind of like they've taken him in as one of their own, like the one American guy on the show, as far as I know. And they gave him, I mean, Churchill's a big figure in England. So it's kind of like he's, they've taken him in. It's pretty cool to see an American playing Churchill. And he does a pretty good job, or at least he tries to. But look, I'm a huge fan of John Lithgow. So
John Lithgow towers over Churchill. I just wanted to see what the case was. Churchill was 5'6".
I knew he was short.
John Lithgow is like 6'10". Like he's
like 6'5", flipped it around, and he's like walking in. He's like looking down at people, and it's just like, are we sure Winston Churchill?
He's 6'4". He's 6'4". I mean, think of it this way: he was on Third Rock from the Sun with Kristen Johnston, and she's 6 feet tall, and he was still
she's tall herself.
She's huge. She's a giant Amazon woman, and he towers over her. So he's a heck of a lot taller than Winston Churchill, but I mean, it works.
So imagine him trying to essentially, like, he has the cane and he does like the hunched over thing, and he's walking like
he's all
like
British.
He's kind of shuffling, and he's all British and stuff. But it's quite amusing just seeing John Lithgow just channel his inner Winston Churchill. I think that's what I get a kick out of. So you kind of you come for the Royals, you stay for the Lithgow, and it's I want to see where this goes. I don't know if I'm going to see the whole show, but it's got my attention. It's piqued my interest. So I'm going to give it a couple more episodes and see where it goes. I don't know if the whole Diana stuff, maybe I might just say, nah, or maybe I might just say, hey, after this being so awesome, I just need to see where it goes, even though we lived it. But we'll see. You got me the crown, at least for now.
3 episodes in. How many seasons are there? Just the one season mini series, that kind of thing?
No, I think it's 4 seasons.
Oh, wow.
From what I've gathered. Oh yeah, it goes
all
the way.
You got a show to binge. If you end up liking it enough, you can go crazy for a while.
There's a lot of history in England from World War II on. So
I mean, there's a lot of history, period. But yes, I guess.
Yes, but apparently theirs is quite entertaining and worthy of visual consumption for us. So
all right.
It's interesting. Like I said, we already know the history, but for some reason we still get a kick out of watching them do their thing over in England. It's very interesting.
Indeed we do. All right.
Yeah.
All right. ¿Y qué más? You got anything else that you've been watching, consuming, excited about?
You took Skyline off my list. So
I added it to your list because we both talked about
it. Or I guess you added it, yeah, but I would say a couple of things. One,
I shared it with you.
Yes, we split it. Narcos Mexico is back, which I have a very soft spot for. It's an awesome show. Narcos was good.
More historical fiction.
Yes, Narcos Mexico is good. These shows kind of come out a couple years apart, so the enthusiasm kind of wanes a little bit because it's been so long since the last season. I haven't seen, I think it's season 3 we're up to now. I haven't seen it yet because I guess I'm watching The Crown now, but I will. and it's awesome from where it was we left off. I don't want to give anything. I don't even know if it's a matter of giving anything away. Again, it's history, right? So,
Does this season deal with anything specific? I know last seasons have dealt with specific figures or characters.
Oh yeah.
What about this one?
I think last season. Oh gosh, I can't remember names anymore. It's been so long. But basically, the main character, essentially, he's been finally arrested. He's finally been taken down. So to me, I kind of seem like, well, that was the end of the show. But I think that this season that just started is essentially kind of like the fallout from that arrest, when you have everything in house under the Mexican drug cartel, under one organization, one person, and that person is in jail. Well, there's a power vacuum. So it kind of shows what's happened after that power vacuum has been exposed. And I think that they try to plant the seeds for the El Chapo portion of Narcos Mexico. But I don't know if there's another season after this and we have to wait another 2-3 years, or if this is it and we get what we get. So, but they've kind of sprinkled the seeds for El Chapo last season, and you can kind of see where his mind working. So it looks like they kind of bump him up a little bit more as far as being a major player on the show. I mean, and all the other things kind of like from the fallout. So that will be watched. And I guess as far as some other things, well, me and reality TV have the soft spot for that. So I'm an old school Survivor guy. It's been on for 20 some odd years, and I fell out of it for a couple of years, but it's back, and it's condensed because of the pandemic, and it's 26 days instead of 39 days, and it's super more double-crossy and more betrayal-y, and it's awesome. And I haven't seen the past couple of episodes, but that's intriguing. And one more for you. It's been a while waiting for this game to come out. We have a soft spot for wrestling. WWE 2K, I guess it'll be 22 at this point, which had been out in October, but I guess they're still trying to work out more bugs and tweaks. Plus, they keep on cutting the whole freaking roster, so I don't even know who's going to be in this game, but it looks like it's coming out in March, and I'm a little excited about that. I think they learned their lesson from how crappy 2K20 was, and that's why they didn't have it out last year and had some weird game battlegrounds. And I think they went back to the drawing board, and 2K22 for WWE should be pretty good. Like I said, depending on who's on the roster. They got rid of a whole bunch of people from the company a couple of days ago, who I assume were also in the game. So I don't know, probably half the people that were in the game to start off with may not be in the game come March, but I'm still going to check it out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you got other wrestling leagues that are actually contenders now, so maybe there'll be another wrestling game that you might want to play in the near future. But for now, I guess it's WWE.
There actually might be another wrestling game coming out. AEW is, I think, in the process of coming out with the game themselves.
They better be.
They better be, yes. We need another game to compete with 2K. Everything for WWE. So
that's part of how you compete in wrestling. That's how WCW and all that managed to even stay around partially for that long, because we played their video games.
That's right. And we'll do it again. They're awesome.
All right.
Well, when they're good.
When they are actually awesome, and when they're not like a total dumpster fire like 2K20 was. But
you play 2K20, yikes.
Yeah, it's bugging.
That's all I have to say.
Speaking of dumpster fires.
Oh, here we go. I was kind of trying to stretch this out so you wouldn't have to talk about.
Do I give too much away?
Talk about?
Do I give it away? I guess I give it away. Here
we go. All right, deep breath.
All right,
go ahead.
Let's talk about the 26th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the only movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to receive a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's talk about Eternals. Question, you and I saw that movie yesterday in theaters. Its entire 2 hours and 37 minutes of runtime, because you got to go from beginning to end with every MCU movie, because, of course, post-credit scenes. We saw the post-credit scenes.
Oh.
We saw the movie. And we're here today with spoilers. We're gonna spoil this if we need to. I would imagine that some of you have seen this movie already, and if you haven't, go and watch it because we are going to spoil it. It did have a $70 million domestic opening, 71 million, I believe, 161 million worldwide, which is not a lot for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, but at the same time, it's in the midst of a still ongoing pandemic, and that's still a pretty penny, even if it's not the prettiest penny for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, you saw what happened the last time when Disney and Marvel tried to send the Marvel movie straight to Disney Plus. They got sued by the main character, so they probably decided to err on the side of financial caution and do all of this in the theaters. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a movie that. Well, we're gonna get into it, but
well, at the same time, the opening weekend for Black Widow, which was also released on Disney Plus, as you pointed out, was $80 million domestic.
Oh wow! So this really came in. So maybe bad reviews did really hurt the Eternals as far as people. I guess if you get bad reviews and you're in the middle of a pandemic, that's probably cause for you not to run to a movie theater with a bunch of people to see it. So probably didn't do any favors for the movie, huh?
Yeah, I probably didn't do this film any favors, and yeah, like you said, those two factors were definitely, I think, something that was in play. But as fans of this podcast know, I've been looking forward to this movie for quite some time, for quite a while, and I've been looking forward to it more than any other MCU project pretty much this year, other than Spider-Man, and it was delayed, I think, a year. There was a lot of things that were delayed and juggled and pushed around as a result of the pandemic, and this got delayed about a year. Finally released on November 5th, 2021, unfortunately, to less than stellar reviews. And I got to say, it's a shame. It's a bit of a spoiler of our opinions on the film, but it's going to be hard to sustain anything other than the feeling of disappointment from generally what this film ended up being. I think a good way for us to go through this is to go character by character, maybe, to kind of see what worked and what didn't, and then we can just generally open it up and see how we felt about the movie in the end. But I was disappointed. What about you? What do you think about Eternals?
Well, I'll say this. I was trying to find a good word to describe how I felt about the movie, and the best word I can think of is mediocre. It wasn't very bad. It wasn't very good. It just, there was just a lot going on. I mean, my brain hurt after watching that movie. It was one of those just, they tried to cram so much into the movie, and they tried to do way too much. I mean, they're introducing characters. They're trying to talk about plot. They're in a post-Infinity War world. So they had a lot of questions to answer while introducing characters, while trying to drive a story, and also trying to make it palatable for a sequel. And also the Phase 4 of Marvel. I mean, this movie did seem like it was trying to do a whole lot, and it kind of did everything halfway. And I want to say it didn't do it very well, but I think, I was disappointed too. I didn't really know what to expect, but it wasn't this.
I mean, it's kind of you're kind of a good person to play off of today, in a sense, because I was excited about it because of what I know about Eternals in the comics and what they mean to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you're a comic fan also, and you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. You've seen every single Marvel Cinematic Universe except for Iron Man 3.
Except one, exactly. Which apparently I have to watch.
Which is the most important film in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. If anybody is paying attention, it is by far the most important film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I never knew Iron Man 3, which I just took a rain check on. I just said Iron Man 2, it wasn't a great movie.
No.
And I didn't think that the MCU would have turned into all of this. So I sat out Iron Man 3. I mean, Ben Kingsley as a Mandarin, I was done. I love Ben Kingsley. The Mandarin's a cool character. I just can't see Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin. So I more or less checked out. Little did I know, apparently that was about the tip of the iceberg for Iron Man 3 and the Mandarin and everything else in the freaking MCU, because I see other movies and they reference all of these characters that go right over my head. So apparently Iron Man 3 is where it's at. Who knew?
Iron Man 3 is both consequential and completely inconsequential to the MCU, because another thing that happens in Iron Man 3 that does not affect the MCU at all is Iron Man retires. Do you remember Iron Man not being around after that?
I was just about to say, wait, he retired. What are you talking about? He retired at Iron Man 3?
He retires as Iron Man at the end of Iron Man 3.
So what? But he was in like all the wait, what? But he was in all the Avengers. Did he unretire? What did I miss?
He never officially unretired. He wasn't like Michael Jordan. He was like, I retire, and then like I officially would like to announce my retirement from retirement like a couple of seasons later. He just was back.
It's kind of like the episode. See, I thought that they could have like what if'd it and said, okay, well, hey, I retire, kind of, sort of, but hey, here's my replacement, with the Killmonger episode.
No.
They could have done that.
I mean, they set up that kid who you would have never known who he was at the end of Endgame. That kid that's standing there, that's like none of the heroes. He was in Iron Man 3.
Was he really?
Teenage kid. He was in Iron Man 3.
You gotta be kidding. Okay, I'm done. You gotta be kidding me.
He was in Iron Man 3. Like that one, that like brunette kid that's standing there in a suit, kind of skinny, that you're just like, I don't know. What hero is that?
Yeah, I had no idea who that kid was.
He was in Iron Man 3. He helped Iron Man.
Subtlety.
He helped Iron Man.
Of course he did.
He was a little kid, and Iron Man was in trouble, and he was a really smart little kid, and he helped Iron Man with some tech stuff and helped Iron Man like save the day. So
he's Peter Parker. That's
another consequential thing that you missed about Iron Man 3. But getting back to the point, the Eternals, you don't know as much about the history of the Eternals in the comics. To be fair, right?
I will say
you know who they are generally.
You're right,
right?
And I will say before you go ahead, I kind of made it a point not to read any reviews for this reason, because I knew we were going to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I was kind of curious to see if the reviews that you had. I read half of one review just so I could kind of remember what the heck happened in the movie. But other than that, I made it a point not to read any reviews because I was a little curious to see if what I thought of the movie was comparable to what other reviewers had said. Something tells me I might not be far off, but I'm sure you've read some reviews.
Reviews are not positive. Reviews generally tend to say that it's a mess and it squeezed too much into one film, and that the characters weren't as compelling as the actors promised.
That's absolutely correct. I agree. So we pretty much were on the same page.
Well, okay. Here's how we'll get into this. Like I said, let's go character by character, but just to make sure that we don't make the same mistake as this movie does, let's not spend too much time on each character unnecessarily and try to make it as concise and interesting as possible with the little time that we have. This movie was directed by Chloe Zhao, who recently won an Oscar for Nomadland. Let's keep that in mind. Oscar-winning director Chloe Zhao. The music, by the way, if you didn't know, has a Game of Thrones pedigree. It was done by Ramin Djawadi, who did the music for Game of Thrones for many, many seasons.
This whole movie has a Game of Thrones pedigree, which I could not also... I couldn't separate the two.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's start with the characters then. We had Angelina Jolie, not as Athena.
Oh, God.
Which she made a point to point out to a couple of characters in the film, but as Thena, because apparently the mythology of humans got her name wrong. What did you think of Angelina Jolie as Thena in this film?
Oh, you wanted to start off right at the top, huh?
I mean, she's the star.
Is she though?
She is. I mean, in terms of star power, she's the star. It's like her and Salma Hayek, right?
I mean, she's the star, but
So tell me about it. What's the
That's the thing. I'm still trying to figure out what her role is. I think that's what. I mean, you're gonna hear me say this a lot. I think for this episode, I'm still kind of scratching my head as to like what these characters, who they are, what they do, and why I should care. And her character, most of all, I mean, to me, her character didn't really serve much of a purpose, especially when you find out that essentially what Mind Weary is it's just
What was it?
Exactly. I don't know. And I think that's a big part of it, about this movie. You just they try to cram so much in, and her character in particular, I think for a lot of it, she was just there. I didn't really know what purpose she served. She was, and the funny thing
She
is,
was
when you
like
see Angelina,
partially catatonic for like a third of the movie, right?
yes, and when you see Angelina Jolie in the movie, okay, you figure, all right, this is a big star. She's going to have a big role. She's going to be a prominent, part in the movie, and she didn't really. She was kind of in and out, and in the parts where she was relevant or where she was a focal point, I'm still scratching my head as to why. The only part where she really did anything of note in the movie was towards the end with, I'm just going to call him the super deviant. And even that whole thing was just kind of like, when she cut him up and whatever else towards the end, that whole thing was just a head scratcher to me. They could have gotten any other of the characters to do that. They could have killed off her character, which is what I thought would have actually added more to her. I don't see, it seems as if they're going to bring her back for whatever sequel there is.
That's what it was, right? I feel like
I don't
all the movie
understand
was
why.
doing was setting up the big Angelina Jolie like vehicle sequel, basically. By the way, the name of the super deviant was Crow, played by an underutilized Bill Skarsgård, because he's kind of becoming one of those like
That's Bill Skarsgård in the movie.
mocap
Okay.
like geniuses, just like
Andy
Andy
Serkis.
Serkis. Yeah, thank you. He's kind of becoming a very similar, like, he can be compelling as a motion captured character, and we'll get to him later. But like, yeah, that his name was Crow, and I kind of agree that whole thing between Angelina Jolie and him was a little forced. I feel like, yeah, it was Angelina Jolie just being set up for a sequel, basically.
Yeah. And for a big moment on, like, in the movie, like, it was kind of like, wait for it. Okay, she kills the big bad, and then...
But was he?
I don't know. That's why this movie drives me nuts.
By the way, so let's try to kind of wrap our mind around some of these plot concepts as we describe them. If we remember correctly, Mind Weary in this movie is a result of the plot of the Celestials in this movie ends up being. So, okay, let me see if I can try to explain what the plot is supposed to be in the beginning
convoluted
and what it ends up being. According to the movie, the Celestials are basically beings that create all life in the universe. They create suns and they create planets and they create all these things. They created the Eternals. They created the Deviants. They created, all of these things in the universe, and like they're responsible for seeding life throughout the universe. Unfortunately, by the end of the movie, we find out that the Celestials actually do this by using planets themselves as seeds for celestial eggs. So in other words, there is a celestial baby being birthed in the womb of the planet Earth, for instance, and it takes all of the sentient beings, all of the intelligent beings, and uses all of their energy to give birth to a new celestial in order to continue to spread life throughout the universe. But of course, this kills everybody on the planet where the celestial comes from. The Mind Weary is the Celestials erasing the memory of the Eternals every time they destroy a planet, I guess, so they can keep them indoctrinated and they don't eventually say, like, well, we don't want to keep doing this and blowing up planets and killing people. We actually kind of like them, so, like, stop making us do it. The Mind Weary is like a bug. It's like a glitch, because another a change in the Eternal storyline in here is that they're, like, kind of robots, right? They're created to be robots by the Celestials, whereas in the comics, they are definitely organic beings, also created by the Celestials. But that's another difference here. So that's a bug. The Mind Weary is a bug where their memory being erased ends up kind of messing with their mental health. And that's what we got from Angelina Jolie in this movie. We got a mental health public service announcement or something, I guess. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I kind of looked at like space Alzheimer's, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
I guess.
I don't know. But, I'm going to let you go. But
we're gonna move on, basically. Sure. Other than, unless you have something else to say about Angelina Jolie, I mean, the thing that disappointed me the most certainly is that obviously to this day Angelina Jolie is still a phenomenal actress. So in the scenes where they did ask her to do something, they were pretty darn good.
Yeah, that's what hurt most of all. Like, if they actually, like, I think, I don't know if it was more, hey, it's a payday and I want to be a part of, like, a big budget Marvel MCU thing as far as Angelina. To me, she kind of phoned it in this role, and then she was like,
At
oh, hey,
times.
sequel, and get more money.
I think she phoned it in certain scenes, and in certain other scenes, it was almost like, oh, hey, Angelina Jolie is back. Like, okay, let's jump into another character down the list to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, and we're going to spoil what happens to this character, unfortunately. It's Don Lee's character of Gilgamesh, who's one of the other Eternals.
One of the few I actually liked.
One of the best characters in the movie. Don Lee does a fantastic job playing Gilgamesh as like a really tough and badass, but also like loving and compassionate and kind member of the Eternals, because he's the strongest, physically the strongest one, even though other characters have more powers, like Icarus is like the Superman, but we'll get to him later.
Yeah, we'll get to him.
The thing about it was, in the moments where they had some interactions, where Angelina Jolie and Don Lee as Thena and Gilgamesh were interacting with each other, and when Angelina Jolie reacts to his unfortunate death in this movie, which should have served to really add to this film, and unfortunately doesn't. In the scene of his death, she does a great job acting out the scene, but with Gilgamesh, the problem is that it feels unearned because he's sidelined for a lot of the movie too. You just see him because he takes a vow to take care of Thena when she goes into the Mind Weary, which basically makes her attack the other Eternals and not realize where she is. He's like looking over her, making sure she doesn't hurt herself or other people. So he commits to doing that for however long it takes. And so that's his arc in the movie. But then he gets kind of killed off semi-unceremoniously in order to kind of drive the character of Thena's motivations. So, yeah, like I think we both really like the actor. We both really like the character. And I think that's the thing that's most infuriating. I think that'll be a theme about a lot of these characters. There was a huge amount of potential with some of them.
It didn't flesh them out. And that's it. It didn't flesh others out. And they partially, I don't think they could have gone deeper with Gilgamesh, but they at least gave you a couple of more layers to him. He wasn't just, like you were saying, he wasn't just, this big guy that, he wasn't just Hulk smash for the entire movie. There was an actual sensitive side. There was a thoughtful side.
Mm-hmm.
And, he cared about Thena and the rest. They call themselves a family,
Mm-hmm.
and family is what you make of it. And he really took that to heart. He took care of her, and they moved to Austria, like the outback practically,
Mm-hmm.
and they were there for however long. But that's the thing. See, my thought was, to me, they're kind of like a package deal. So I was under the assumption, okay, once he died, then okay, Thena would too, because, well, the guy who took, who is essentially, who took care of me for all these years, what's to live for? Because I'm not real. He's not real. This whole thing isn't real. He's just, he's gone now. I have nothing to live for. I just figure, I have Mind Weary. I'm just gonna get, I'm just gonna get, killed by. I'm gonna call him still a super deviant, but I really felt that when Gilgamesh's character died, that would have opened the door for Thena's character to die as well. I think that would have been a little bit more poignant. Plus, I don't understand what she is without him, in a sense. I guess that's what we're going to find out. But I also figured that Angelina Jolie wouldn't go into a movie and just do one. I figured she'd be part of the sequel. So I didn't think she'd die at the end of the movie, but it just kind of complicated things for me when Gilgamesh did, because I thought the best thing for her character is that she would have died too.
Hey, look, I wanted to see Angelina Jolie go out both for budgetary reasons and story reasons. In this movie, like Jon Snow was supposed to go out in that scene in Game of Thrones where he was getting charged at by an entire army of horses. Should have gone out like a badass and made something of her sacrifice in this film. I think that would have been more effective. Or I would have done it the other way around. I think we talked about it. It would have been better to sacrifice Thena and have Gilgamesh be the one who gets vengeance, although the motivations are a little bit confusing when it comes to Crow. But again, we'll get to that. I want to get to another character in the Eternals, in the Eternals crew. Let's talk about Gemma Chan as Cersei, who was, I guess, effectively, she was the point of view character of the movie, the most point of
Yeah.
view character of the movie, right? She was kind of like the main character. What did you think of Cersei in this film?
I thought she was a good character, good actress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have any faults as to her character. The one thing that just I could not get over the whole time was they kept on calling her Cersei, and I know that's the name of the character in the Eternals, but I just I couldn't wrap my head or at least separate Cersei the Eternal talking to Jon Snow and Robb Stark, and they're just referring to as Cersei for 2.5 hours. I,
Happily, I might add,
yeah, and
rather than with scorn and disdain, as they
I just
should.
it's something. I mean, part of me just kind of feels as if they got those two to act in the movie just so that they can hear them say Cersei for 3
Because they've
hours.
said it so many times before.
Yeah, and then just
Cersei.
say, "Hey, we got some Game of Thrones people, huh? There you go, connection."
Check it out. You got
You
a
know,
group.
yeah. I didn't find anything wrong with her. I thought that she was a good character. Uh, the one thing we talked about how these characters weren't fully fleshed out. She wasn't really fully fleshed out either at all.
No, she just was the one that liked people, like humans, basically.
Yes, and
She was the one that had to be designated that, so that there would be a reason for the Eternals to want to save the humans, and that's why she was the point of view character in order
yeah,
to do
but
that.
I don't know. To me, it just seemed as if there were so many reasons for her and for the rest of them just to be like, yeah, Earth is cool, but imagine if when this planet goes and there's an even cooler version of Earth. So I'm just trying. I just could not think of the motivation. Like it's like you're going through all of this to save Earth. And again, hey, thank you very much as a human being. Thank you. You know, I'm glad that you're trying to save
Yeah,
me.
but we don't care if
But
you live or not. Like, we don't
but
care
it's
if
one
the
of those.
Eternals, like, if Cersei died saving the Earth and Icarus and Ajax and all of them died, we would have been like, okay, well, that was a movie and the Earth is still around. So good stuff. Thanks, Eternals.
Yeah, it just I would have liked for a character to have been a little more fleshed out too. It was they said, okay, she's the main character, kinda. As every other person in this movie was too. She's kind of the main character. And there's kind of a love triangle, and now she's with one guy, and then she's with another guy. Oh, but wait, here comes this guy again, and it just
Too cliche.
very cliche. They could have done a lot more with her character, and they didn't.
Here's why I had a problem with her character. A fine actress, did a good job. Again, talented cast, had a lot more that they could have done with this. And in the moments where they did have something to chew on in terms of content and like actual good writing, they did a great job. But here's something that I thought of really, if you really think about it. And we're going to, in a way, touch on two other characters this way. I get that she was supposed to be like a goddess of rebirth, and that was kind of like why she was the one that really, really loved the humans and all, like loved humankind and all that.
Oh, is that what she was? Because they didn't even mention that in the movie.
About her power, she was like the one that would like turn like nothing into water and like.
All I saw her do was take a big rock and turn it into sand.
You remember she gave them like crops and water. Like she gave them like she was like the Fertile Crescent in a person.
But it would have been nice if they had delved deeper into that. Yes. They didn't. All they did was say, okay, she's a professor, she's a teacher, and she's in love with Jon Snow.
Follow me
here comes Robb Stark.
Follow me
and
here.
Then
follow me here because
I
think the Icarus love plot was pointless. Okay, that didn't.
Half this movie could have been chopped off, but that was pointless. Yes,
that plot was pointless. I don't think that gave any effective motivation to Icarus that we could identify with. Really, I think he could have had much better, much different motivations. We'll get back to him. And I have to mention two other characters in order to make what I think would be a point that would create a better movie. We always kind of like to talk about this sometimes on the Get Geek podcast. When we don't like a movie, we're like, what would have made it better? I think that the mistake that this movie made to a certain extent was not having Kit Harington, Jon Snow, be the point of view character for at least a good portion of it. Can you do that with the flashbacks? No. But movies like this, I think, work really well when you have somebody who's kind of a normal character, even though Kit Harington is going to end up being a superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Of course.
Dane Whitman is Black Knight, right? Nobody knew who Dane Whitman is I don't know much about Black Knight, but I do know that Dane Whitman is a superhero, and it took me a while to remember that he is the Black Knight in the Marvel comics. So he's going to be a superhero. But in this movie, he was effectively a totally normal person. So here's how you do this. Actually, here's how you provide the point of view from both the Eternals perspective and from the human perspective, which I think would have made it better. There's another character we both agreed was underutilized and actually had the best motivations out of the entire cast, and that was Leah McHugh as Sprite.
Go ahead. Yes.
Wouldn't this have been better? No disrespect to Gemma Chan in her role as Cersei, but wouldn't it have been a heck of a lot better to take those motivations and carry them throughout history, where you are an eternal, you are an immortal being who can do anything you want to, basically, in your life, and you will be a little kid forever. You will never get to experience things in general the way that adults do. You can't really get into romantic relationships in the same way. You can't experience all of the things that adults can because you look like a little kid, even if you're thousands of years old. As it was a much better conflict to have Sprite, who, okay, like the character kind of sometimes flipped in weird ways at weird times to me in terms of her motivation.
Very strange.
I got the motivations, but again, it was with Sprite, even though she was a good character, it was another example of a character that there was the right basis there and there was something to build on, but we didn't spend enough time with her, which we could have done by having her be the POV character if we had spent more time with her and seen that motivation rather than her just like look at Icarus, Richard Madden, a couple of times and be like, oh, I love you, swoon. Like, rather than have that be the way that we figure out what's going on and have Kumail Nanjiani's Kingo, who we'll also get to, basically say it, do the exposition, there would have been something better there, I think, if we had Sprite be the main character, quote unquote. I don't know. What do you think about Sprite, and what do you think of maybe that idea to make the movie better?
Well, I guess you can't talk about Cersei without talking about Sprite, right? Because they were together at the beginning and all throughout. I think we had this conversation.
What that would have done effectively, sorry to cut you off again, but we would have gotten more of the conversation between Ajak, Salma Hayek, and Sprite, which is something that they show later in the movie where Sprite's like, this is the last time I saw Ajak. Why couldn't we have just seen that conversation instead?
That's what irritates me. You didn't understand. Because to me, Sprite was another character that was just there until the very end. The second she did her little heel turn and she was just like, hey, Icarus, like, I'm on your side now. I was all about her because she was the one character whose motivation actually made sense. And I was wondering throughout the whole thing, too, if essentially you were created by, what the hell? What is this guy's? Is it Ashram? What is his name? Whatever his name is.
Their head celestial, Arishem, yeah.
Well, I was kind of wondering, I guess that's a plot point, just to, you're going to have everybody be an adult except for this one character. And I don't know why, because I was asking myself the same question. Why did he make her like this? So I understood her motivation. She had, I don't want to be on this planet either. All of you are having all the fun, and I get to watch you have fun. That's not cool to me. If I'm Sprite, I was so on board with her when she turned on everyone. It was just like, yeah, we need to get rid of this planet because I need a redo.
Girl,
like,
I get it.
You guys have been having way too much fun, and I haven't been able to join because look at me, I look like a child. Like, nah, we're done with this planet. Like, Icarus,
next,
let's go, buddy.
Next.
And I love you. Oh man, like, and even more. But see, that's the thing. They made it more complicated. She loves him, and she's a child, so she, I mean, we could have, if we simplified it, we could have told a similar story with less craziness. And we were talking about this before the other day. This easily could have been 2 movies. It very easily could have been 2 movies.
I would have loved it. Because there was so much they could have done with these fantastic actors. They could
have fleshed out all these characters that much more. And Sprite's a very fascinating character because that's somebody, she has a totally different dynamic, a totally different way of looking at the world than all of the other Eternals. So yeah, she's a character that I would have loved for them to have dug a little deeper on. And the thing is, she's in the movie the entire time, and she's just an extra. And
Yep.
then she does what she does, and then it's like 15 minutes later, the movie's over. And then, okay, like she now they can make them humans? Like, what?
We'll
Like,
try to explain what she did in a minute.
but that makes no sense. And again, I'm going to ask the same question. She was real quick to turn. She went and started stabbing Cersei. She literally stabbed Cersei in the back. I think you tried to explain it to me. So even though she stabbed Cersei in the back,
they have limited regeneration powers, but remember, they're also robots. So stabbing can only go so far.
So, oh God! Like I said, it's just there's way too much to remember.
Let's go into this. Let's tie it into another character before we get caught on Sprite and how that was kind of the failing of the movie. Let's talk about Icarus, the movie's
They dropped the ball with her a lot. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
Richard Madden, Rob Stark himself as Icarus in this film, who again I thought could have been a fantastic character, and here's how I would have played it. I would not have had any of this betrayal nonsense occur in the film. I think we have to get into the other villain of the film, the villains of the film next, and then kind of continue on from there in order to make this all make sense. But Icarus should not have had that heel turn and then the turn back to the good guy. For those who don't know what happened in the film and maybe like are okay with spoilers, what eventually ends up happening, as we said earlier, is that the Celestials destroy a planet that they emerge from when they are born. So Icarus, basically, who had been on the side of the Celestials and was, besides Ajax, Salma Hayek's character, the only Eternal that knew about this plot, was on board. He was like, yep, I'm with it. Celestials want to destroy this planet. Forget about this planet. Let's do it. Let's go to the next one. We got to go for our duty. I think having him fight the Eternals was silly. I know why they did it, because they wanted a big Superman-style battle like Justice League. I get that. But I think that what they should have taken from Superman instead was his sense of duty without the willingness to be violent. I wanted him to have that conflict where he was like, you know what, maybe the Celestials are right. We have to do this in order for more life to be born in the universe. After all, one life could probably mean millions. One life sacrificed in order to birth a Celestial in this context apparently like means millions of lives.
They said billions, actually.
Billions of lives, hundreds of worlds, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So one sacrifice,
better than Earth,
right? Yeah, like that makes it kind of a Endgame or Infinity War style sacrifice. Like, is this for the greater good? Since like more people will be born from the sacrifice of Earth, so that was a failing on this movie's part. I think they should have highlighted more of Icarus fighting a lot more variations of that head deviant, because I think the other issue that I had with this movie is that there was only one kind of evil deviant, one Bill Skarsgård as Crow. Heck, you could even have Bill Skarsgård play multiple Crows. Have him do the voice for a bunch of them. But if you had a few of them that you gave them a personality, something that they had in terms of goals, you would have had a much more effective villain in this film. I don't know. What did you think about Icarus and like kind of that thought process?
Again, Icarus, like all these other characters, there's another opportunity lost. I found it quite amusing that they just didn't. They were so obvious with it. I mean, they just basically called him Superman outright, like Marvel's Superman, basically.
Yep.
They had the line that Clark Kent Superman line that Fastos threw out. That was, to me, the funniest, the best line of the entire movie, because that was definitely the wink and the nod, tongue in cheek, fourth wall. You know, that was them kind of, you know, having like their little, you know, if you're looking glass moment with the audience. But when if you're gonna essentially bite Superman from DC, if you're gonna bite that character off, you might as well just go all the way. And I kind of didn't appreciate. I think I mean, I do agree with you. I think that if you're gonna have Superman light, then yeah, give him truth, justice, and I guess in this instance, the intergalactic way, all the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have him be a character that is trying to, you know, I think he might have come to the same terms or the same thoughts and ideas as Cersei as far as, okay, hey, Earth is worth saving, let's work together. Or what you mentioned before, if there was a greater conflict between the Deviants and the Eternals before the Celestial situation, then I think that it would have given everyone that much more time to flesh out the roles. Well,
you know what they could have done with him? You know what they should have done with him? He should have left the way that Kingo did. He should have been like, I don't want all these lives to be sacrificed, but at the same time, I believe in the Celestials' goal, so I'm sitting
I have a sense of duty. Exactly. I'm out. Whatever happens.
Plus, you take the most powerful Eternal out of the equation. That creates a little bit more of suspense
of a conflict.
Story, you know, instead of him being essentially, like you said, the Superman stand-in every way, just like in Justice League, the movie where they fight Superman. They fight Icarus because they just needed a Superman fight, basically.
Yeah, they tried. He was half Superman, half Cyclops, right? He has all Superman's powers, but he's bound by a sense of duty to to essentially his master. It's not Professor X this time, but it's Ajax and the other Ashram. What I can't remember the guy's name.
Arishem.
Thank you, Arishem. I assume he's going to be in Eternals too, because he flew off into the sun, I guess, like Icarus. Like Icarus did.
Apparently, he sacrificed
close
himself,
to the sun.
But I don't believe he did. I don't think he did either. I think we were meant to believe that, but I think he'll be back. You don't.
I think so, because you never saw. Because how is it in TV and movies? If you don't see someone dying physically,
I didn't see the body.
They're not dead.
I didn't see the body. Plus, Superman is like energized by the sun. If he's Superman, he'd probably win in the sun. He's gonna come back way more powerful and be like, "Hey, about that conflict we had, let's talk about that again."
Right. Honestly, I was half expecting Nuclear Man to come out when he went towards the sun.
Nuclear Man.
I would have lost it then, but another opportunity lost with Icarus. And the funny thing is, I'm assuming you're going to go in, or I don't know if you've want to dig a little bit deeper into Black Knight, Jon Snow, Kit Harington, but even in this movie, he plays second fiddle to Jon Snow. That's what made me laugh.
He should have been
so much.
He should have been the star of this film. I think it would have been a much better film having him observe these crazy events, kind of like the end of the movie, where he sees these crazy things happen and it leads into his little post-credit scene, which I guess we'll jump on him very quickly.
Well, if they were smart, they could have done, actually, now that she mentioned it, they could have, where they have the scene where Ajax, they found her dead. They could have scrapped all of that out. It couldn't have, they didn't have to play the, Icarus turned on her and all that crap. What they could have done, they could have actually had the two of them. They didn't have,
or whatever.
I think what they could have done was they could have essentially faked her death, right? Like in South Dakota. And then he still would have disappeared Icarus. But I think the twist could have been, hey, she didn't die. And they were both looking down on Earth to kind of see what was going on. And then the both of them were just kind of like, well, we told you, this was going to be, we told you this is what was supposed to happen. And you guys betrayed us.
The one that should have betrayed them outright should have been Ajax.
Yes, and that could have been the foundation for Eternals 2.
Exactly, it made more sense from her being the matriarch and being the leader of the group. Her betraying them would have made a lot more sense than
more sense.
Superman just decided to betray y'all. Like Icarus is just like, you know what? Why not? I agree. And
because, like I said, because now it's a twist within a twist in another twist.
And that
why
Salma Hayek's Ajax. I want to tie into that because the way they did her character arc, I think, is what broke the movie, actually, because
I agree. Her and Angelina together,
but her especially because the way that she died, they just show up and she's dead. She died unceremoniously. We don't get to see why it happened. And we find out later in the movie it's because it's a misdirect and because we find out that Icarus betrayed her and killed her. So we couldn't show her death because of that, in my opinion, again, stupid and unnecessary twist. But her not being in the movie really at all, except for a couple of scenes where she's just I don't know, from beyond the grave or like in flashbacks.
In flashbacks, right? Yeah.
They show her as a character and what she does and who she is. It would have been that much more effective had she been the one to betray them in the end. They would have been either been forced to kill her or bend to the will of the Celestials. I think that's a better conflict. She could have been the one to have sacrificed Thena or Gilgamesh or both to create a conflict for the other Eternals. And also, you have Icarus, who's on the fence, creating another conflict internally between the group that would have made more sense. In addition to Druid, who we'll get to again in a minute, who also had the opportunity to be a bit more of a conflict in the movie, and they never really did anything with that either. So for me, generally, the problem with Salma Hayek and Ajak is she's not in the movie at all.
There was enough of her.
She's supposed to be the linchpin of it, and she's not in it.
Totally agree.
So it doesn't help the movie in that way.
Not at all. I mean, they didn't do, and that's the thing. We kind of got a bait and switch in a sense. So it was like we have all these big A-list celebrities, your Angelinas and your Salma Hayeks, but we'll only put them in for 15 minutes. I have a 2.5-hour movie, and we'll do it in bits and pieces. And yes, Ajak is the matriarch, and you're right, like the misdirect, all of that. If we're going to have a part 2, again, let's have a part 2 properly. And we could have had the second Eternals essentially be the conflict between Ajak, Ashra, Arishem, Sprite, and Icarus. It could have essentially been 4-on-4. They could have really fleshed out the characters that much more.
Rather than just have Icarus be and Ajak be the bad Eternals. Really.
And on top of that, they could have actually used that to then fold in some new Eternals, because that's essentially what's going to happen in Eternals 2, right? There's even, if 9 wasn't enough, there's even more Eternals out there, and we're going to get to learn them as this whole franchise progresses. We could have used this plot point to then flesh out those other, like the current characters, and then introduce the new new Eternals in the second one, but. I mean, that ship sailed. And the thing that kind of is frustrating throughout this whole thing is that they're trying to tell a story. They're trying to introduce characters, all while basically saying, hey, this is what was happening while Infinity War was going on. That was the other thing that was driving me crazy, because it was kind of like, all right, you essentially sat out the Infinity War. But now it's like, how many times Earth's like, I don't know how many times Earth can be under like a sort of Armageddon. I mean, my goodness, it's been a rough decade for Earth between Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet, and now freaking Arishem, that dude, Arishem, and pretty much just coming out of the water.
Let's get this point in the way, and we'll try to keep moving, because we're gonna try to wrap this one up with the last few characters. Here's a plot hole if you're a comic fan. They were instructed to never interfere unless a deviant was involved, right? That's what it's like in the comics, kind of. Also, they were instructed never to interfere unless there was a deviant involved. Thanos is an Eternal with the deviant gene in the comics. So Thanos effectively is a deviant. So effectively, when Thanos was doing all the business that he was doing, the Eternals should have and were indeed obligated to jump in and stop Thanos, because he's a deviant. Plot hole. Even though you can explain that away by them never saying that he has the deviant gene in the MCU. That was never explicitly stated in the MCU. It is in the comics. In the comics, he is a deviant. So, also, if that's the case, that means that Thanos is half robot. But we're not going to get into that. Let's continue.
I was going to say then Thanos essentially was trying to start the job that the deviants were supposed to finish. That essentially, and you see, it's funny you go down that route, because theoretically, couldn't Ajak and the rest of the Eternals come down and assisted Thanos in the Infinity War? This all could have been over like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Basically, they could have been like, well, Thanos, he wants to destroy Earth too, so that we can get this evolutionary cycle of the Celestials going. Well, hey, you know what? We'll just speed it up. Instead, they were just like, nah, Thanos just screwed it up. Like he prolonged. I'm like, oh god, like just really? Like, now we hate him because he didn't. I'm done. Go ahead.
Let's continue.
Too much.
Let's try to move on into some characters that maybe worked a little bit. Or actually, let's move to another character really quickly and then move on very quickly because that character was fast and that was it. Lauren Ridloff as Makari. I don't know what she was in the movie for. She was there to be fast.
She served no purpose. She was there. She disappeared. She came back. She said, hey, like we're back together again, and there she was.
Yeah, she was there to have that cool fight scene with Icarus, where she like beat him up by being fast for a few seconds, and then
to run fast, and that was pretty much. I guess a love interest for
Druid.
For Irish McLovin.
We'll get to him. First, let's get to a character let's get to the characters that probably worked the best, even though they still had some issues. Kumail Nanjiani as Kingo, excuse me. I thought his character was actually the most fun character in the movie for obvious reasons. That Kumail Nanjiani is a fantastic comedian. He's very funny. His motivations were a little odd also, though, in the end, unfortunately, because even though he was entertaining, he had a large part in the movie. He had more lines than some of the other characters. He had his valet, Karun, played by Harish Patel, who he loved, but also didn't care enough to get involved in the battle to save humanity in order to save him. And he pieced out, which is what I think Icarus should have done, because there was no actual motivation for Kingo to be like, I think the Celestials are right. He loved humanity. He loved being a Bollywood star. He loved being on Earth. If anything, he would based on who he was in the movie, he should very obviously be on the side of not destroying Earth. So that whole like, I'm not sure at the end, other than that, he was good, but that made zero sense for him to disappear at the end.
Well, I liked him until he bounced from the movie and was just like, yeah, I'm going to sit this one out. Like, you literally came all this way, and then 20 minutes before the movie ends, and then, the big scene, yes, we all have conflict, but you sat this one out, and then had the nerve to be like, yeah, well, that was a great job we did, like, stopping them. You didn't do anything.
Good job, guys.
You weren't like in the kick-ass part of the fight. You took you sat out. You went on the bench.
You took a rain check.
I just don't understand. I don't know.
I wouldn't still want to be in ballet after that. If I were Karun, I would have been.
Not at all. Well, I mean, not when the faith of humanity. Basically, you saw what he did. He walked out of the room, and then. The valet was pretty much just kind of like, yeah, like essentially, thank you, all the rest of you.
It was nice knowing y'all.
Yeah, like thank you for fighting for me. Like thanks for fighting for the planet. I don't know about what my boss just did. Apparently, he's sitting this one out, and it sucks for us because I'm assuming without him, well, we're all screwed. But thanks, I'm gonna go back with him. And it was just like, what? And then they use him as a catalyst to then set up the fact that Icarus was in fact evil, haha, because, but did you just save the lion and I'll follow you to the end of the earth or whatever the hell?
Mm-hmm. That's how we got the flashback where you found out that Ajax and Icarus were in on it, but also not in on it at the end.
And one of those things, to me, I think it's something I guess I appreciate with this movie, but something that I think kind of I don't want to say took a lot away from the movie. I think that it was more on the director. I think that I was reading this, earlier. It's this movie is very, very inclusive. It's the most diverse cast ever when it comes to Marvel, as far as people of color. There's a deaf person, who's one of the Eternals. But the whole thing with like the Bollywood scene, like that was a few minutes. We need that. I get it. Okay, he's a Bollywood star. We need, okay, he's a good dancer. That's wonderful. That's 5 minutes right there that you could have chopped off of the movie. You could have just said, hey, I'm a Bollywood star. Like, and look at me. I play my grandfather, my great-grandfather. We could have had that conversation and done a little bit more editing.
I mean, if he had decided he wanted to help humanity, that would have been an effective motivation. Like I said, he's a star. He loves being in movies. He loves these big productions. He loves his valet. He loves the cast. If they had left that in and had him stick around for the final battle, it would have made more sense, and I would have liked the character a lot more. I would have been fine with leaving that stuff.
I agree. Because he comes back at the end. Like, why? Just to be like, hey, good job, guys. Like, sorry for seeing this one out, but
just to have Kumail Nanjiani in it, basically.
So weird. Yeah. In all honesty, yeah. And he was the one person I was just kind of like, I think I was most intrigued by him most of all as far as what his role would be in the movie and why he's there. I'll allow it as far as him being in the movie. I just wish that, his motivation was a little more noble.
All right. So let's get to the last few characters here, if we can. We got Phastos, Brian Tyree Henry, who, again, missed opportunity, I think. I understood his motivations. I liked his character. I liked the fact that he was a really cool inventor. He was actually one of the coolest people in that final, unnecessary as it was, battle when he was fighting Icarus and kind of tying him down using his powers. That was pretty cool. I thought that was like one of the better action scenes in the movie. But again, as wonderful as it was to have an LGBTQ family in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and that being his motivation, I mean, there wasn't still that much to his character.
It didn't add anything to the character.
You know, I mean, it did, but like at the same time, because we spent so little time with him.
Thank you. They didn't flesh it out.
It didn't matter much.
Another way, they didn't flesh out.
We got one speech from his husband and we got a couple of quips from his kid. That's not enough to give you strong motivation. We got more from Karun. We got more from Kingo's valet in terms of like, here's a person that like motivates this Eternal to want to save the world.
Yep.
I get it. It's Brian Tyree Henry's family, Phastos' family in the movie, but we still got more reason for Kingo to want to save the world than we got out of Phastos, especially after he did the flip where you had Phastos wanting to give humanity technology, right? Because he was like, that was part of the point. They were supposed to help humanity advance. Yep. Phastos wanted to do it. Druid didn't. Phastos decided he no longer wanted to do it when he was a part of the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. He decided, oh, hey, maybe it was a bad idea to give humanity to use nuclear weapons. And then when we find him again in the modern day, it's like, oh, hey, he's got a family. And he decided humanity is worth it again, but like not with weapons and stuff. So it was just too much, I think, unfortunately, which I love Brian Tyree Henry. We both do, but that's kind of what ended up happening in this one.
Yeah, again, another character who they didn't flesh out enough. I like his character. I think he's a really good actor. And it's awesome that, they went there as far as, he's a gay character. That's awesome. I would have loved to have learned more about him, his family, all of it. Again, it's just, it's like, oh, hey, he's gay. That's awesome. Like, let's hear about his life. I'd like to know more about him too. We never got a chance.
We got a little out of him, and there was just so much potential there as the inventor of the Eternals. All right. Let's see. This is the last actual Eternal in the crew. We have Druid, last but not least.
I forgot about him.
And unfortunately, he's really last but not least because, again, I mean, there's a theme here, right? How fascinating it would it have been to see what he was doing all this time. This character that has the power, played by Barry Keoghan, that has the power to control minds. And when we find him in the modern day, he is the leader of a cult of people whose minds he is controlling. He's partially a villain in the comics.
Yep.
Why they didn't explore that at all here is absolutely beyond me, because again, he's a character that at the end of the movie, like you said, he should have been on the 4-on-4, as it were. He should have been on the side that was just like, well, I don't care about these humans. Like, not really.
Yeah.
He said that he did at times. He was like, oh, the horror of letting these humans kill each other. But then he didn't have a problem with like taking over their minds and making them do his bidding.
That's why.
Danger be damned.
I agree. And I think I was scratching my head at that part of the movie too. For someone who says they care about the fate of humanity and, we can stop this, with literally just like one snap of a finger, it seems to be the theme for Marvel. He goes and controls everybody and then disappears. And, again,
where'd they go?
Motivation and are it the same people from 600 years ago?
I mean, probably
in 1521?
But still, where'd they go? He had a whole army following him at the end of that one scene where he walked away from the Eternals in the past.
It looked like there were a few people who were there from 1521 that were still like, tilling the soil 600 years later. So I don't know.
Who knows?
What's his motivation? Like I don't know.
And he was a perfect character to kind of drill in the conflict. Him, Icarus, Fastos, or not Fastos. Him, Icarus, Ajax. I'm messing up the names right now too. And Sprite are basically your characters that are like, you know what? We kind of think the Celestials are right. And then you have the other side of the crew being like, we think they're wrong. And that's your setup for a second movie, which unfortunately we didn't get to see here.
And with that, you could have gone into, hey, what have you guys been up to all this time for, 600 years, or at least from Infinity War? They could have had time to flesh out the characters. They could have developed a little bit more of a stronger plot, and they could have set everything up for round 2. But it just seemed like they just tried to cram way too much in this, include everybody, and not really give any thought, rhyme, or reason to why these characters are and what their motivation is. It's just mediocre and disappointing. And I guess I'll see Eternals too, but I mean, it's kind of one of those like, hold your nose kind of things.
We'll see if it's any good. Special honorable mention to Bill Skarsgård as Crow, the the super deviant. There was so much more we could have seen from him. He could have been not quite, but almost a Thanos level villain where you understand his motivations. I thought that the whole plot with the Unimind, instead of the Unimind being used to stop the Celestial in this situation, I thought Bill Skarsgård's super deviant Crow could have actually used the Unimind against the Celestials, since he had the motivation to do so, and they could have made him a big bad in the movie, but with realistic motivations, because the Deviants were just pawns, just like the Eternals, just like everyone else in the Celestials game. You would have felt for this monster. You would have had feelings for this monster, just like, again, like a Thanos, like a Killmonger in Black Panther. There's so much more they could have done with that character, and instead they just made him into a simple big bad when there was something that they could have fleshed out. So it's the really thing that bad.
Well, the thing that hurts is that they were going there. Like the times he spoke, it was just like, A, holy crap, he can speak. And B, he actually had the more poignant things to say. He seemed to have actually sat down and thought out this whole thing. And he's just like, you do realize that you and I, being the Eternals and the Deviants, are essentially two sides of the same coin. We have the same creator and we're pitted against each other. Why is that? An actual existential question by a deviant. And now let's just chop him in half and let's just move on with the story. Like the one character that I think he's sad to say he was actually the deepest character in the movie. in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And another person or thing, entity, celestial being, whatever, that they dropped the ball on completely and totally.
All right. So that's the main cast generally. Let's finish up with post-credit scenes, and let's get to Kit Harington really quickly as Black Knight. I don't even know why he was in this movie.
Honestly, like I said, he wins in the end and didn't have to. Like I said, Jon Snow beat Robb Stark, and Jon Stark didn't have to do anything. All Robb Stark had to do is be a jerk, and Jon Snow wins. He served no purpose in this movie. He was just there to be just as a love triangle situation, but then he comes in the beginning, disappears for the entire movie, comes in the end.
At the end.
Why? You could have been introduced in episode 2.
Here's why I want to tell you I'm so upset. Actually, I didn't even forgot about this. One other thing I understand about Black Knight is the modern Black Knight has some of the memories of the prior Black Knights. He's not the only Black Knight. It goes back to the freaking Knights of the Round Table. So if you had him as a POV character, you could have had his memories be involved in those flashbacks and have him really be an effective POV character. So no reason for him to be in the movie unless they did it that way. And then there would be a great reason for him to be in the movie. Other than, again, we're talking about post-credit scenes, the only reason he's in the movie, and I think you're going to agree with me, the absolute only reason that Kit Harington as Black Knight is in this movie is so that Mahershala Ali as Blade can say something to him in the end, and we can all be like, oh, it's Blade. That's the only reason he's in this movie, in the post-credit.
I guess. I guess so.
That's it.
But
think about it. What other reason than to be in the love triangle that we didn't think was necessary? Right. That's it.
It was his whole presence there was just pointless. It was pointless, and
it's too bad, honestly, because I like.
Yeah, he brought nothing to the movie at all. Nothing. But okay, maybe he's the love interest, or he's not. Sure. I mean, as soon as Icarus came, I mean, man, like seriously dropped Jon Snow real quick. Granted, like, and that's the other thing. Like, we never got any explanation as to where Icarus was for all those years, right? I mean, they just said, "Oh, we got married and we loved each other," and then I flew away.
Yeah,
and it's just like, okay.
Well, I guess he was off being. I guess he was off plotting. I guess.
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine because no one ever says.
Or maybe he was just. Well, he said he felt guilty because he would lie to them for all those centuries because he knew the truth. And I'm like, nah, I guess.
I get that. Okay, but dude, again, what the hell have you been doing for 600 years? Didn't answer my question.
Yeah,
like were you staring at the earth?
He was brooding.
Were you with Ajax? Just so many missed opportunities, so many holes, just so many unanswered questions, even though they tried to answer a whole bunch more, and they just end up confusing you that much more. And I don't know if it's. I think a lot of it's on the director.
I think it's on Kevin Feige. I think Kevin Feige dropped the ball. I think Kevin Feige should come out and apologize and say, you know what, we should have made this 2 movies. Or I don't know who if anybody had that thought, but he's the one who ultimately has to make these decisions, and he should have known that he was literally falling into the trap that their biggest competitor, DC Films.
I was just about to say they DC'd this movie.
Where they're exactly like, here's a bunch of characters, and they're in a movie, and they're going to fight some people. Enjoy, and that's it.
Yeah, you kind of know their history, but we're not going to tell you what the history is. Here's the plot, and you'll figure it out. We'll tell you the history while we go through the movie and the plot, and 4 hours later, the movie's over. Tune in for the sequel.
And when the movie ends, we get the probably the most consequential post-credit scene. We get Pip from Infinity War and from the Marvel comics, played by none other than Patton Oswalt, a CGI character /MODOK, who comes in and introduces none other than Harry freaking Styles as Star Fox /Eros, brother of Thanos. Oh man! Okay,
he looked like a teenage Shazam. Sorry.
Here's why I told you I liked it. He did kind of have a Shazam thing going on. That's fine. Again, Eros, if you know anything about him in the comics, he's supposed to be a little bit corny in a sense. He's like somebody whose power is to make people fall in love with him, basically. I mean, he's got Eternal's other powers. He's got super strength and speed and all that. But yes, he's like the god Eros, who is the god that can make you fall in love with him. So I think it's a fine choice because, again, whatever, teen heartthrob, who I've also seen has some talent as an actor, I think it's going to make sense. But here's why I think it's going to make even more sense, because I'm going to tell you where I think he's going to be next. I think what movie that he's going to appear in next, and you might agree with me that it makes sense in this movie even more, he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I guarantee it.
Well, that's where he should have showed up to begin with.
Well, I mean, introducing him in this is not that big of a deal. Either way, he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You might see some of these Eternals in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but if you know anything about the comics, Pip is basically best buddies with Adam Warlock. And who do we know is being introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy 3? Adam Warlock, played by Will Poulter.
Which is why I don't understand why they, like I said, they should have just waited till that movie in order to introduce Eros. My whole thing was I was climbing the walls practically by the time that movie was over. I was ready to run out of that theater. And I said, okay, fine, we have an end credit. But good Lord, 2. And I wouldn't mind 2 end credits, but for a movie that's already practically 3 hours long, but I didn't really like very much. I mean, that was just more time to be in the theater. So we could have done with just, I mean, if they wanted to have Jon Snow, they could have done the Black Knight thing. That would have been enough. But look, I mean, Harry Styles, okay, fine. Yes, another, surprise. If he's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, then you know what? They should have had that be the end credit for that. The end scene. Or,
why would it be the end
how about another idea? Huh?
Why would it be the end scene though if he didn't?
No, I'm saying that could be the end scene for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, 1, or 2. They could have just introduced him in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and kept it moving.
Well, I mean, I think that it was fine because you have to introduce him in a cosmic level Marvel film, and there are no cosmic Marvel films coming out for a bit. I mean, the next one
Guardians
is
of the Galaxy,
Guardians of the
cosmic.
Galaxy 3. But yeah,
And
that's what I'm saying. There's no issue in introducing him beforehand. But
that plus, I think it was also shock value, which is kind of like, whoa, Harry Styles. I think they just wanted that kind of like, wow, another cameo at the end. So, like I said, something they could have held on and kept for the next movie. They wanted you to leave the movie theater thinking, oh wow, now Harry Styles is in this Marvel universe. Great.
That's what we left the movie with. All right. I guess we'll leave the episode with that. And this was a nice long one. You really didn't like this movie. You had a lot to say about it. That's for sure. That's okay.
The more I sat down, I thought about it after we saw it, and I was just like, wow, I really don't like this movie. I really don't like this movie. I don't.
Well, you're not the only one. I had a conversation with another friend of mine earlier today that saw it yesterday, and they weren't a fan of it. So I guess the consensus so far, until we hear from the rest of the Get Geek crew, is the movie's just okay at best. It's okay at best.
Yeah.
We're sorry. I'm sorry. I really was looking forward to the Eternals again, as everyone listening, the rest of the Get Geek crew, and Question No, I was very, very much looking forward to this movie. So disappointment is all I can say. We'll leave it at that.
Gonna have to.
All right. Well, like I said, let's end it there. We will not be recording next week, so we're going to take a brief 1-week hiatus from the podcast. We gave you enough this week, I think. In order to fill you for 2 weeks, you can listen to this episode about the Eternals and our unfortunate, intense dislike to lukewarm attitude about that film. Anyways, the best way to support your favorite podcast crew, as we've said all times before, is to like, rate, share, and subscribe on all of our social media platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter at Get Geek Podcast, on Twitter at Get Geek News, hashtag Get Geek Podcast or Get Geek News in order to find all of our social media pages, web pages, and podcasts on podcast platforms, as well as all of our episodes. The best way to support your favorite podcast crew, again, is to rate us on Apple Podcasts. No better way than to rate us on the big old empire that is Apple. Let us know, get us some exposure. And you know what? Other than that, I guess there's nothing left to say this week other than stay geeky, my friends. Peace out.
See you later.